Speaking with reporters aboard Air Force One earlier this week, Donald Trump was asked several questions about what many are describing as an increasingly imperial posture, stating the U.S. will run Venezuela or floating that Greenland will belong to America, quote, one way or another, and often musing that Canada should become the 51st state. Well, Trump brushed all that off, and he said this. Check this out.
The voters that voted for me, let me just tell you, the voters that voted for me are thrilled. They said, this is what we voted for.
Now that's more than just rhetoric. That's a bold claim of consent, and a hard one for me to believe. Now, I'm not naive. I know who we're dealing with, but it just seems like one hypocrisy, one fraud, one cover-up after another. That MAGA civil war that the Epstein situation has caused is proof of that. But I believe that claims like this deserve to be tested. Not emotionally or just politically, but factually. So we're going to test it on this episode of The Quiet Loud with me, DeAnthony Collins. But before we begin, do me a favor. Please like this video and subscribe. And tap the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you've been with us, then you already know this community is growing. And I couldn't be more grateful that you're here. And if you're new here, this is just a place where we unpack all the noise and nonsense and get down to what's real. All right, so as I said before, tonight's episode starts with a bold claim. And we're going to test whether it survives contact with a little bit of our reality. We already know that it won't. Spoiler. If voters are truly thrilled, then the first place you'd expect to see it would be in his approval ratings and the last few election results, right? But according to a Reuters Ipsos poll conducted in December, now this is just like a week before Christmas, Donald Trump's overall approval rating set at 39%, with approval of his handling of the economy falling even lower at just 33%. All right. Again, this was right around Christmas time. So it's not like we're talking about where he was in August. So that puts him near historic lows for a sitting president this early in a term and this close to a midterm, particularly among independents, women, and younger voters. Aggregated polling data shows a consistent pattern, though. It shows disapproval outpacing approval across multiple tracking surveys, not just one outlier. Okay, so this Reuters Ipsos poll is an average poll. They're all trending this way, within that margin of error. Meanwhile, in special elections all across this country, Democrats aren't just winning, all right? They're overperforming. Even in districts where they may not have won, they are overperforming, including in districts Trump carried comfortably just months ago in the presidential election. It could be something where he was polling 20 some odd percent ahead, okay? That now a Democrat is possibly losing by 5 points or so. That's not what political scientists associate with a thrilled electorate. You understand what I'm saying? That's what early warning signals look like. Okay? So voters who are satisfied aren't hedging their support so easily. They don't quietly shift the way that we're seeing here. They don't send messages quite this early. You roll with the person that brought you, right? Yet, that's exactly what this data is showing us. So we can talk a little bit about what Americans consistently say matters to them the most. And we all know this. I give you one guess and you can guess what it is. It's affordability. It's the economy. Now, I'm not talking about GDP growth or stock indexes, because not every person walking around is keeping track of the GDP or are as leveraged as some stock investors are. All right. We're talking about the cost of groceries. We're talking about the cost of rent, the cost of gas. We're talking about staying afloat and making your ends meet from month to month. A PBS NewsHour analysis shows Americans are now more dissatisfied with Trump's handling of the economy than at any prior point in his presidency. A separate JL Partners poll reported by the Daily Beast found nearly half of Americans say life has become less affordable under Trump, with affordability emerging as the top issue heading into the 2026 midterms. Now, at the same time, Trump's tariff policy are operating exactly as economists warned that they would, as consumer taxes. We all know that, and we all feel it when we go out to the grocery store and you see that the stickers have jumped. not just by a few cents, but we're talking about by dollars here. Okay, something that you're actually going to notice. We have people here who are more and more relying on their credit cards to buy things like groceries and gas than using them for big ticket items and emergencies as people historically did. According to multiple businesses and trade analyses, tariffs raise import costs, tightening supply chains and pushing prices directly onto consumers, the very people that Donald Trump claims are thrilled. The people who were talking all about what he said the magic word he won on was groceries. They're talking about this now, and Trump is telling you that everything's fine. Meanwhile, he's floating ideas like a so-called tariff dividend or one-time checks. But temporary relief doesn't offset the permanent price inflation, okay? And we already know that we're not getting those tariff dividend checks because there's not enough dividend to go around. Okay, so you're talking about $2,000 checks or so, which is now morphed into $2,000 checks so everybody can go out and buy health insurance. I don't know where you're going to be buying health insurance for $2,000 at, but it's the same idea, the same money, and none of it is coming. Now that we're in midterm season, we could probably expect a bribe in the form of a check with Donald Trump's name on it, but it's only going to be that, just a bribe for your vote. People don't typically vote for economic strength and then quietly turn around and be thrilled about the fact that things are just as expensive or more than they were when they elected this guy. So I talked about healthcare a bit. Healthcare may be the clearest test of this Trump claim. The Enhanced Affordable Care Act tax credits expired on December 3rd, all right, of this most recent past year, 2025. According to AP News, average premiums for those losing the credits are expected to rise by as much as 114%, putting coverage at risk for millions of Americans. The Kaiser Family Foundation poll reported by AP shows adults aged 50 to 64, the group most affected, are now seriously considering dropping coverage altogether. Not because they want to, but because they have no choice. If you're in this age group, it could be very likely that you still have aged parents who you're taking care of and also your own children. So congressional Republicans have refused to bring a clean extension to the floor, forcing Democrats to pursue discharge petitions simply to allow the vote, which is coming up. So we're going to have to see just how that shakes out. If any Republicans are going to use their conscience and vote for the interests of their constituents and the American people. We'll just have to see. We've been burned before. Reuters analysis warns that this healthcare standoff could reshape the 2026 midterms, with voters blaming Republicans more than Democrats for the lapse in coverage. Thrilled voters do not have to brace for medical debt, something that they were told was going to be taken care of, that they were told concepts of a plan would be revealed in 2 weeks. It's been so many 2 weeks now that we can't keep track anymore. They're starting to lose the confidence in the president they voted for. Now we need to address something a little bit more serious, carefully and responsibly. Donald Trump himself has repeatedly drawn attention to his own health, talking about multiple cognitive tests and unexplained MRI scans that after weeks, perhaps a couple months of talking about it, somehow became CT scans. I mean, we had doctors supposedly sign off on the fact that it was an MRI, just like Trump said. And now they're backtracking and saying, well, it wasn't an MRI at all. It was a CT scan. So what's really happening here? The visible bruising, the swelling, the increasingly erratic public behavior. I'm not mocking illness. Please trust that. I take the fitness of our president, the health of our commander-in-chief to be incredibly serious. All right. This is not about stigmatizing disability either. It's completely about fitness for command. When that same individual downplays transparency and also is the one ordering military strikes and threatening the sovereignty of other nations and framing global conflict in terms of his own personal legacy, questions about his capacity become unavoidable. Health becomes a governance issue when secrecy replaces accountability. And we all know that this administration loves to keep everything close to the chest. They don't tell anybody any truth. Nobody in their administration is telling the public anything true. It's having to be found out by good reporters and journalists out there, sometimes by the nation who they're out there lying about. When Trump says we're bringing back $1 trillion in funds from this particular country, and this country says we never said that. When he goes and has a meeting with Russia, the president or their counterparts, and he comes out and makes a bold claim, and then they come out and say, never happened. This man has zero credibility. And we have to take into account whether or not these things that he says are happening are actually happening, or whether or not it's happening in his declining brain. All right? It's so important, especially when the lives, wars, and markets of our country and the world are at stake. So let's talk a little bit about foreign policy. Trump claims to be the president of peace. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll released in January, only 33% of Americans approve of this military action against Venezuela, while 72% express concern about the U.S. becoming too involved in foreign conflicts. Remember, no more stupid wars? AP News reports that Trump has openly suggested that the U.S. will effectively run Venezuela following recent operations, drawing criticism from allies and foreign policy experts alike. Now, his own administration has somehow backed off of this. I think that was just some word vomit, just something that he said, that we will effectively run it. Maybe he wasn't supposed to say it out loud, but he did. I don't know. Meanwhile, rhetoric about acquiring Greenland and redefining Canada as a subordinate partner has further strained our relationships with NATO and Five Eyes allies. Even Trump voters consistently poll against imperial expansion and foreign entanglements. They did not vote for conquests for resources like oil and rare earth minerals. I do remember them saying something about no more stupid wars, which we all know only Congress has the power to declare war anyway. So we're looking at more corruption from this administration. Finally, if voters are truly thrilled, then why do courts keep stepping in? Trump-appointed judges even have repeatedly blocked executive actions. The Supreme Court is now poised to rule on the legality of Trump's tariff authority. And that's according to a Reuters reporting that happened just yesterday, or around January 6th or 7th, signaling deep constitutional concerns about executive overreach. Consumer protection agencies like the CFPB are facing funding threats, while journalists like Julie K. Brown, who investigate corruption, are reporting intimidation and surveillance concerns. Her name was swept up in the Epstein files. I'm sure she was wondering why. Okay? The Epstein files, though, continue to loom, raising questions not just about past misconduct, but about transparency today. These guardrails exist for a reason. And when a president keeps colliding with them, keeps clashing with them, keep overriding them, keeps sidestepping them, trying to circumvent them, it is not because the voters demanded lawlessness. It is because accountability is still doing its job. We rely on a balance of powers and checks and balances, so that when one president is overrunning his authority, the other branches will step in and protect us and protect our democracy. Okay? Thrilled voters do not sue their favorite president for running an email fundraising scams on them. All right? I don't know if you guys have heard about this. It's been going on for a long time, years, since his first administration and first campaign. Okay? A lot of these lawsuits are still being adjudicated right now, with more of them to come, because there are new stories about him still running another fundraising email scam on his supporters. Okay, that's a whole nother episode, so I won't dig too deep into that today, because I think we did it. I think we tested that claim that voters are thrilled that this is what they voted for. But the data says something different. His approval ratings are low. Affordability is worse. Healthcare coverage is falling off a cliff. Foreign policy right now is so unpopular, and the courts are intervening. So whatever people voted for, we know that this isn't it. They certainly didn't vote for the horrific murder of an American citizen by a masked ICE agent, for which I send my condolences to the family and all those Minnesotans that had to stand along and witness that pure act of hate and lawless terror. This moment will demand focus, discipline, and credibility from citizens, from our leaders, and also from anyone who wants to be trusted with power in this country ever again. So if this episode helped clarify anything that's happening right now, please do the simple thing that helps this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe and share it with someone who feels the unease but can't quite name it yet, who may be ready to walk back through that door. And all they need is your license, your approval to do so. And it's going to take what I always ask you guys to do, to be loud in your listening and to be real in your truth. All right, I'm DeAnthony Collins, and this has been The Quiet Loud. Please take care.